Hebrews chapter 11. Hebrews chapter 11. Folks, this chapter, and I know we went over this a couple of different times before, but boy, this is a really good chapter in this Bible.
You know what good thing about it, though?
What's that?
We've been studying a lot about that.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to bring up. John has been covering faith
3 months.
For about 3 months in our Sunday school class. And folks, this is the faith chapter of the Bible. When you say Hebrews 11, that's pretty much what is called the faith chapter. And I think it has a lot in here when we look at it. I know we're not going to get through all of it tonight because it is something that we can take our time and talk about. But Hebrews 11, chapter 1 says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." And I think that is really good. And I know we quoted a lot in here. I don't think that is really a definition of it as much as a description of what faith is. Faith is a substance, and what is a substance? And the word that they actually use in the this was written in Greek. In the Greek translations, and I had that wrote somewhere, and I must have left it at the house. But it actually translates the best, and I know I'm going to of substance. It really does mostly of the better translation for is assurance. That's the word I'm looking for, assurance. It translates, they said, better to the word assurance than substance. And I think of that, it is an assurance that we have, and the things that we hope for in the evidence of things not seen, and the evidence it is translated also is kind of a proof of things. And I know we say this a lot. Now, faith is a substance of things hoped for, and the evidence is a proof. The evidence is a proof of things not seen. I think it says evidence or substance is the things that we can't see. None of us have seen God with our natural eye. We haven't seen Him. We can see the effects of the things that He has in all of our lives. We can see the effects of the things He had of the beauty that's around us. And it always amazes me, and I'm sure a lot of you may be the same way. When someone comes into our state that has never seen our state, how in awe they are of our state. Jerry's on his way up. He'll be here sometime Sunday, and he's bringing the lady up that he's going to be married in June, and he wanted her to see the state. See us and get to know us before some of us goes down. Patsy and I have met her, and it always is amazing to me is when you ask them what do you think of our state. And Jerry's talking about one lady that he brought up here that when they was coming into the state that she was hanging half her body out the window trying to look up and see the top of the mountain side of the road. And they just go on about, but it's things that we see every day and we don't pay that much attention to it. These rivers and stuff that we have is something that they don't have or they don't see much of. The beauty that we can see God's work. And I think that is the evidence of God that is all around us. We don't see Him.
Within us too.
Do what?
He places that evidence within us.
He places it also within us. It's not just the physical things that we see, it's the spiritual things that we feel. Folks, I have been in church services, I've been in them right here, when His Spirit comes down on you so hard, it's almost like it's a fog around you. And I love that feeling to have it around us. But it's just pouring out around us. And I was thinking a lot of this revival. I've spoken with Darius quite a bit and spoke with Don about it. And I think those two guys are pretty fired up. I know Darius is really fired up about this revival. He even told me when I talked to him Monday morning. He said, let me tell you how good God is and how He works. He said he's been telling every church down that way that they need to come up here for this revival. And he said, I'm going to tell you how God works. He paved the road all the way down there for them, so now they got no excuses about not being here.
Yeah.
So that's what he said. He said, God made a way for him. He said, if there's any excuses,
Right up to the church.
all the way up to the church, going to have a new paved road for him. And Darius is pretty excited about it. And I am too. I've been praying hard about it, and I'm wanting to see something happen. But the faith is a substance. The faith. The substance of things hoped for, but the evidence of things not seen. As I said, we haven't seen it, but we know that out there. He said, for by it the elders obtained a good report. What was it that they had with faith? They had a good report. We can go through this Bible. We can read of the different things that's happened. But he also gets into it in this chapter of some of those things. He says, through faith, we understand that the worlds were framed by the Word of God. We read in Genesis where God spoke the world into existence. As it goes on, it says here, so that things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. God spoke it into words. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He spoke it in, and I've used the illustration in sermons before. I could take a tree and I can cut it down. I probably can't do it, but somebody here can. I know Jim and them could. And they can take it in that sawmill they've got and they can make boards out of it. And I can take it to my shop and plane it out and I can make something out of it. And somebody told me one time, boy, that's something nice to create that you created. And I said, I didn't create anything. I just took something God had already made and made it into something else. Only God can create something out of nothing. And that's what He did.
He just gives you the ability to do it.
He just gave us the ability to do it. That is absolutely true. Because that's what he was talking about in verse 3. He says, for by faith Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous, because God testifying of his gift, and by it he being dead yet speaketh. Now, when I've often wondered, when I read the story of Cain and Abel, now here it says that Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifices. What made it more excellent? Well, I often wonder that too. Was it in a way that he offered it? Was it better? Was it because it was an animal sacrifices? But God also in the Old Testament accepted vegetables and stuff as well as an offering. Was it maybe because he said that to offer the first fruit of your work? Maybe it wasn't his. I mean, I don't know that the Bible ever tells us exactly, but I really think the reason it was a more excellent offering, I think it was in the spirit that it was given. To me, I think it has a whole lot more with the attitude that they had and the reason they did it more than what it was that they gave.
God knew their heart, didn't He?
I think that is the reason why it was more excellent. And I think it's the same way with us today. When we come and we offer our prayers, when we come to church to offer up whatever it is, the praise that we give Him, do we all come to the church with the same heart? And that's a question that I often wonder when I go to different churches or I look around the churches. And are we coming because we're here to worship God because that's what we want to do? We want to go to church. I know Dad tells me all the time, I just can't wait to go to church. He wants to go to church. I feel like I've missed something when I miss church. You miss something. Where do you come because that's what you know you're supposed to do? You don't want somebody to say anything about you not being here. Oh, I know there's those that does that. There's those that goes to church just because that's the way that mom and dad raised them. But I think it's why the sacrifice was better of one than the other, and it was the purpose in their heart. And I think sometimes that may hold our church down and other churches around us, and God's church in general, was those sometimes it comes to worship doesn't do it with the right
Abel
heart.
did it more unto God, and Cain did it unto himself.
I think so. That's just my reading it.
It's like Henry and Henry said to me one this night, they said, you're going to get in trouble. I said, I'm not coming no more on Wednesdays. Right there telling me I need to be over here, said, you're having one tonight. I said it, and I won't be there.
Yeah.
But you know, you gotta get your priorities straight.
Yeah, and I think by coming to church, you know, and I know we can't always be here. And I know you can't always be here. You've got times that the things are just going on and you just can't make it. And I think God understands that. But when we can, we need to come to church, and we need to come with the Spirit to worship God. I remember Mom talking about when they were kids that they would leave the holler around there and others would join in, and they would be singing hymns as they come to church. When they come through the door, they were ready and prepared to worship. I think sometimes when we get here, we're not ready, we're not prepared. We come in, we sit down, and we lead a song and singing, and sometimes that starts getting you ready, and you start listening to the. You know, we need to be ready when we come through the door to worship the Lord. What is the intent in our heart? I wonder about that sometimes. He goes on in verse 5, he says, by faith Enoch, which translated that he should, or was translated that he should not see death, and was not found because God had translated him. For before his translations, he had this testimony that he pleased God. Isn't that something? The Bible talks of just a very few people in the Bible that did not die, that was God carried them up. And why did they carry them up? Because they pleased the Lord. Isn't that something to think that when we leave here, folks, there's been some of these saints that I have seen that has left here, the testimony that they leave us when they left, and they're up here in the box, in the house, that this house of clay that they lived in temporarily. We know that they're not there. We know where they're at because they showed it by the way they lived. And I remember
He
one.
was one individual.
Yes.
He said he lived between a couple, but all the other people around him.
That's a good thought. What about the ones around him? I think of another one called Elijah that was carried up in a chariot of fire. And Elijah that was left behind, he wanted a double portion, didn't he, of that?
Elijah, how come he wasn't?
How many of us, when we've seen one of the old saints here, we're thinking, boy, I'd like to have a double portion of what they had. The love that they had for the Lord. I remember my grandma, and I know a lot of y'all do too, she loved to sing about the Lord. She loved to sing, and when Claire was teaching the choir down here, she loved that. She would show me stuff on the hymn book, and to hear what we do with this and all this. And I don't know if y'all know this about my grandma. She couldn't sing a lick. She couldn't sing a lick. But boy, did she love to do it. And I'm going to tell you what. I tell somebody all the time, I'd rather have somebody that can't sing in tune with the music, can't keep in key with the music, but sings from the heart. I'd love to hear that more than the best singers they have that's singing something that's the wrong stuff. When you sing it from the heart, my grandma sang it from the heart because she meant it. But they love to try, and I think that's the intent of this also. 6 says, but without faith it is what?
Impossible.
Impossible to please him. Why?
To believe that he is. Believe it.
You have to believe that God sent his son. You have to believe that he lived a perfect life. But most of all, you need to believe that he died and was buried, and that he rose again, and that he sits at the right hand of the Father. You have to believe, you have to have your faith in that.
You gotta believe he's coming back too.
Absolutely.
He'll be here.
Absolutely. And I'm telling you what, the things that we see going on in this world, folks, I don't think it's going to be very long.
Second chapter of Ephesians, there it says, for by grace are you saved through faith.
Mm-hmm.
That not of yourselves, it is the gift of God.
Right.
You know, we can't do it ourselves. It has to come from him.
Yep.
And, you know, I think a lot about that, a lot of times. We're saved by grace, not of ourselves. But we live each and every day by faith.
It's nothing that we can
What's
do.
your faith in? I mean, you can have faith in a lot of things.
Yep.
But the most important thing is to have faith in the Lord Jesus Christ and what he done for
Yep.
you.
Yep. I've heard Larry saying it before. You got faith when you go out there and start the car, it's going to start. You got faith that when you get home, your home's going to be there. We can have faith in a lot of things, but we need to make sure it's in the right
In
things.
the right place.
Oh, I agree.
Faith is a very important part of our Christianity.
It is. It's so very important.
That's impossible. He didn't have it. It's impossible.
It is. Without faith it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him.
Mm-hmm.
Not just come every once in a while. Diligently seek him.
Desire.
Right. Isn't that something? We have to believe in all of these things and have faith in it. What good would it do to come to church if you didn't believe that stuff?
Mm-hmm.
As Don used to tell us, we might as well be playing bingo.
Yeah.
I called and tried to get a hold of Don yesterday. Talked to Wilma a little bit. She said he's down at Lowe's getting stuff to build a ramp into the house. I said, a ramp? She said, yeah. She said, we're kind of thinking about, it ain't going to be too much longer. We may have to have a ramp into the house. He said, John's going to be 80 his next birthday. I said, no, you're not. You're kidding me. But he diligently seeked him. Then he goes on and says, by faith Noah, being one of God to things not seen as yet, moved with fear, preparing an ark to the saving of his house, by the which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is by faith. Can you imagine how much faith it would take? Now, today I think it wouldn't take us nearly as much faith. But if God told you to build a big boat out there in your yard, because I'm going to make it rain. Now, remember, it has never rained in Noah's time. It said that a mist came up and watered the stuff. It had never seen rain. They had never had a flood. There had never been any of this stuff happening. But God told him to build an ark. Well, I'm going to tell you what, that would take a bunch of faith.
I just wonder how many people around about him at that time thought it was crazy.
Yeah, he said he preached to him. If you go back and read the story of Noah, that he preached to him, was 100 and something, 120 years or something like that.
How long did it take him?
I bet you when the door was shut, there was about them pounding on the door.
Oh, I bet there was too.
One time that rain started, like you said, it had to have a rain. That was a awakening.
When God closed the door, it was too late.
Yeah.
They lie in bodies, and there's nobody to bury them.
That's what's going to be one of these days too. for a lot of people, Barry. When he closes the door, it's going to be too late.
And that is. And that's what I was really just getting ready to say, is that he closed the door and knows it's time, and he's going to close the door here one of these days. And when he calls his church out of this place and he turns his wrath loose on this world, it's going to be too late. I can just...
5 of them trimmed their lamps, 5 of them did too, but they didn't have the oil.
They didn't have the oil in them. You know, they're going through the same motions, they just wasn't prepared.
I wonder sometimes, Barry, and I don't know, it might be awful to say, I don't know. Like I said, I sit down and see what's going to be the national news. Out in Oklahoma, Kansas, South Missouri, some of the states, and tornadoes and run rampant.
Mm-hmm.
Destroying people's homes, killing people, whatever else, tearing up stuff. And I wonder sometimes, is the Lord not sending awakening calls out to people? I don't know. Well, it just makes me wonder, you know.
I believe he does. I really and honestly, I believe the same way that you do. And I listened to a man that really wasn't a preacher. Maybe he was a preacher, but he was explaining some things in Matthew, some of the signs and stuff that's coming, and how the world brushes that off to some. It's global warming. It's not God giving a warning. It's not the thing fulfilling that says that the Bible. They like the world has an excuse. You see, and that's what his point was anything that God has created and said is going to happen, the devil will make something just opposite to draw people's minds away from it. It's global warming.
You can read that, what they say will happen. You can read it in God's word. You already put it in there.
Yeah.
We know it's going to happen. He said it would. And it's happened. This is the beginning.
Yeah.
It's the beginning.
But you see how the world, though, blinds the people of the truth of this is what God's causing to happen. Because our country just keeps getting further and further away from God.
Unbelief.
It's getting so much further away from Him. Turning to anything that they can.
Just like a lot of stuff you brought up in the first part of the service about your young health, what you're standing for and stuff. God's not in that, Barry. And like John said, you take the Bible and you read that Bible, and you know, it tells you about what's going to happen and everything. But I don't know, it just seems like this day and time people have no concern. They just get farther and farther away from the Lord.
Right.
That's, you know, it seems like everything else is more important. They don't want nothing to do with the Lord.
And I think that's, you see so much, there's so many things that distract the people away from God now. We've got ball games on Wednesday night. When I was in school, you never heard of such a thing. You got these little things now that people has in their hands, and families can be sitting in the same room and none of them can talk to each other unless they text each other.
Amen.
It distracts so many people away from the things that's around that is God. I mean, how are you going to notice the beauty of God around you if you got your nose in something all the time?
I heard somebody talking the other day, and I can remember, and I know John can remember, a whole lot of us, there are a lot of us, one thing. When we were younger, hardly a store or nothing was open on Sunday.
Yeah.
People respected the Sabbath. Now, Walmart, all these places. I mean, people just jump in the car, run down to Walmart.
It's just another business day.
Yeah. But I did see one place the other day, unless I'm mistaken, that doesn't open on Sunday. And I think it was a Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
They don't open on Sunday, do they?
Yeah, Hobby Lobby's not either. Hobby Lobby is not open on Sunday.
On Sunday. There's a few, like I said, still out here that respects the Sabbath.
Yeah, look how good Chick-fil-A does too.
Yeah, Chick-fil-A and Hobby Lobby are both very successful in the things they do.
Yeah, it's, and this has been an awakening in the land.
Yeah, now that's what I said.
That's the reason I said a while ago, I wonder about all this stuff, these tornadoes and stuff that's going on and everything. If it's the Lord and His working, trying to wake people up.
Yeah, and that's what I said.
Don't get me wrong, I feel sorry for these people because, maybe they'll lose their whole home, everything they got, and it's a sad situation.
Yeah, it is. It's a sad situation.
I feel sorry for them.
It is.
And it could happen to us.
It could happen anywhere. Yeah.
These last storms that went through, these last bad storms, we got a little taste of it.
Yeah.
Here in West Virginia.
Which we normally don't ever get
tornadoes.
tornadoes.
Don't get it. So, like I said, it's.
But the world can just slough that off on something else besides God trying to wake people up.
Yeah.
He prepared an ark, didn't he? Then he says, by faith, Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after received for an inheritance, obeyed, and he went out not knowing whither he went. Well, we know how Abraham, all of these people that is in this chapter that they're bringing up are all probably heroes in the faith that we would call them. They were all people that we know stories of probably since we were kids. It's the same stories. They're such heroes that we teach them to the little kids. Martha Backer shaking her head, yeah. I know they go over that stuff with the kids. See, Abraham, he didn't know for sure where he was going. God told him to get out from his people, among his people, and he would make him a great nation and all this stuff. So he left, and it says, by faith he sojourneyed in the land of promise, as in a strange country. What do you think of that? A strange country. He went into a foreign land, dwelling in tents and tabernacles, as I said, with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. He went out into a place that he wasn't sure. He trusted God to send him. And I think that so parallels our own lives sometimes. God has called all of us into some type of a ministry. Some it's with kids, some it's in music, some it's in preaching, some of it's in teaching. Some of it is just helping out. Folks, it takes everybody in the body of Christ. From the ones that cleans the floor all the way up to the preachers and everything. All of us is important, and we all have it. But a lot of people doesn't step out in faith, believing that God will make a way if they just obey and go. I often think of this young Clemens boy that's from up Clay. Frank and Dee Dee's oldest boy. He was a tremendous athlete, and I think he was all-state in football and all-state in baseball, and was runner-up to state in wrestling. I mean, he was a tremendous athlete. All these scholarships and all these things, schools that wanted him, and where's he at now? He is a missionary in England. Been over there for many, many years now. Has his wife, he's married, has kids, and he's serving the Lord in a church in England.
Who is it?
Frank and Dee Dee Clemens boy.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Now, Sarah and them and one of her friends is going to be flying over to England for a few days this summer, and they plan to go visiting because they're friends with him as well. And I think that where would he be if he didn't obey what the Lord had him to do? Where would we be? No And what would we be doing right now if we didn't come to church? Because he told us to go to church tonight. I think a lot of times we get afraid to put our full trust in Him, knowing that He is going to make a way for us because He only wants the best for us. Just as we want for our children to have the best, He wants the best for His children as well. Abraham stepped out on faith. Verse 10 says, "For he looked for a city which hath foundation, whose builder and maker is God." See, not only was he following Him here on earth and doing what he had, but he also had a promise, and he knew that God was going to make a better place for him. Here on earth, he left the place that he had to go to a place that God created for him, and he knew that that was going to be a better place than where he was at. But we also have a promise that there is a better place that God has went to build for us, as he says there, that whose builder and maker is God. He has a better place for us. Why don't we trust in Him? Be faithful to Him as we've been studying.
I don't think there's any history or in the Bible where his family was godly. God called him. He made a change in him, and he put that desire, you talk about what within Abraham. Just to pick up and go. I mean, how many would do that?
How many would do that? Well, let's look at the other side of it here. Through faith also Sarah, I mean, you know, she had a part in this too. Herself received strength to conceive child, and was delivered of a child when she was past age, because she what? Judged him faithful who had promised. Sarah had a child way past the age that she was have to. Remember, she laughed in the tent when she heard what the angel of the Lord had said. And he wanted to know why she laughed inside herself, and she said, I didn't do it. Well, yeah, he knew. See, Sarah was faithful though, followed after Abraham, did everything that he wanted, and was faithful. Therefore sprang they even one. Hold on, let me try that. Therefore sprang there even of one, and him as good as dead, so many as the stars of the sky, in multitude as the sand which is in the seashore, innumerable.
Father of many nations.
I don't know if you've ever tried to count the stars at night. I thought about trying, and I started on it one time, and I said, wait, that is silly. There is no way you can count all of those stars up there.
Can't tell which one you already counted.
Lose track. You can't. Or how many of you went and got a scoop when you was a kid, or watch your kids get a scoop of sand and try to count how many grains of sand there is in that scoop?
A handful, let alone all of them.
Abraham was promised he'd have that many heirs, the father of many nations. Boy, isn't that something? But here's something that I think that I find that we talk of all of these heroes of faith, all of these in the Bible that had promises, all of those. Look what he says here in verse 13. These all died in faith, not having received the promise, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, or they were convinced of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For they that say such things declare plainly that they seek a country. Think about it. We've talked about all of these heroes of faith here, and I'm going to quit there in verse 13 for tonight. But all of these heroes of faith, all of these ones that had promised, and they did what God had. They knew that they were seeking a better place. They were promised even a Messiah to come and take care. They knew the promise. They knew all of this thing to come. They knew through the seed of Abraham that he would come. They had all this stuff, but they never saw it. Let me ask you something, and this is the thought that when I read that, I think to myself, boy, how privileged we are that we didn't see it with our physical eyes, but we can see it right here in His Word. We now live under grace. We don't live by the law anymore.
Each one of us sitting here tonight, are we not seeking a better place?
We are seeking that better place.
We like here.
Oh,
We
yeah.
know sooner or later, Barry, by faith, that by the Word of God tells us it's appointed on the man once to die, and after this the judgment.
Yeah.
We know we're going to all leave out of here sooner or later. If the Lord tarries and this world stands, we're not going to stay here forever.
Yeah.
So the main thing is to be prepared to meet Him when He calls.
Absolutely. All right, folks, I hope you all got something out of this mess tonight. But I tell you what a privilege we have to live in the time and era that we have. And I think it is so important in this time that we live in, when we see the time growing near, and we see the signs of the things going around us, even though the world doesn't see it the way we do, that it is important even more that we tell people. We need to tell people more about the coming of Jesus Christ. And I think this world, we see all of the stuff that's happening in campuses, and we see in all the stuff that's going on. And I think a lot of it is people are seeking something to fulfill themselves, but what they need is Jesus. And I think it's up to us to tell people. There's people that are hungry and thirsty for something in this land, and it's not the physical side, it's spiritual. And I think it's so important that we, and I hope that's what this revival is. I pray a lot for the revival. That it revives us, that we can go out and tell people about the good news of Jesus Christ. Anyone have anything